Everything you've been taught about reality, how it works, what's possible, what's real, has been incomplete at best and deliberately distorted at worst. You've been trained to chase outcomes without ever being shown the invisible forces that govern them. You work hard, set goals, repeat affirmations, hustle for progress, but still, something feels off, like you're playing a game and no one ever gave you the rules. That's because the rules were never meant for the masses. They've been hidden in plain sight, buried in old books, veiled in symbols, and whispered through centuries by those who understood how reality actually operates. One of those books is the Kybalion, an unassuming text that doesn't sell you a new belief system, but unveils the laws behind everything. It doesn't ask you to worship. It asks you to understand. Because once you do, you stop living reactively and start living consciously. Once you see the code, you can't unsee it. For most people, life feels like a series of disconnected events, random highs and lows stitched together by hope, struggle, and routine. You wake up, chase goals, react to problems, try to stay afloat. But under the surface of what we call reality, there is a structure, a system so precise and foundational that it doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not, because it's working on you either way. This system is what the Kybalion calls the Hermetic principles, not theories, not philosophies, laws, immutable, ever-present, and operating at every level of existence. You were never taught these laws in school. Your parents didn't hand them down at the dinner table. Your teachers didn't mention them during morning announcements. And society? It thrives on your ignorance of them. Because once you understand how this system works, you become harder to manipulate. You stop reacting and start creating. You stop being a passenger and become the architect. That's why the teachings in the Kybalion have remained in the shadows, hidden in mystery schools, buried beneath layers of symbolism, referenced quietly in esoteric traditions, and rarely spoken of in mainstream thought. These principles weren't meant to be erased. They were meant to be reserved. The Kybalion describes 7 universal laws that govern everything, from the movement of galaxies to your private thoughts. These aren't abstract ideas floating around in the spiritual ether. These laws shape your relationships, your health, your career, your identity. They define how manifestation works, how healing works, how cycles repeat or break. And if you've ever wondered why things seem to just happen to you, the answer is simple. You've been living under these laws without knowing how to work with them. Imagine trying to play chess without knowing the rules, just reacting to every piece that moves, confused why you're always losing. That's most people's reality. But the Kybalion offers the rule book, and the moment you read it, you start to see the board differently. The pieces stop feeling so overwhelming. You stop being a pawn. Some of the deeper applications of these laws are too controversial to share on this platform. That's why we created Insights Academy, our free newsletter. And right now, you'll get a digital copy of the Kybalion for free. Just hit the link in the description and enter your email. What's most staggering isn't that these laws exist, but that they operate with complete neutrality. The universe doesn't care if you're aware of them or not. It doesn't care if you're aligned with them or fighting against them. Like gravity, these principles just are, which means you're either working with reality or you're working against it. And when you work against it, life feels chaotic, unpredictable, frustrating. You try to manifest something, but nothing clicks. You repeat habits, get stuck in toxic cycles, and tell yourself it's bad luck, bad timing, bad energy. But it's not. It's misalignment. Once you start to align with these laws, synchronicity increases, fear dissolves, resistance drops, patterns start to make sense, not as coincidences, but as echoes of your own consciousness. You realize that nothing is random, that life is giving you exactly what you signal, mentally, emotionally, energetically. And it's not magic, it's not religion, it's not belief, it's mechanics. The Kybalion doesn't care what you believe in. It just explains how the engine runs beneath it all. It shows you the blueprint. And here's what makes it powerful. It gives you your agency back, not with toxic positivity or mystical bypassing, but with real understanding. Because once you see how this machine works, you can stop being confused by it. You can stop fearing it. You can start using it. These laws don't promise an easy life, but they promise a clear one. A life where you're no longer guessing, no longer stumbling in the dark. A life where you move with the current instead of being crushed by it. The blueprint was never gone. You were just never shown it. But now, the door is open. The first and most powerful principle in the Kybalion is the law of mentalism. It states, simply, that all is mind. That everything you see, touch, experience, and even fear originates in consciousness, not as a metaphor, not as mysticism, but as the raw framework of reality itself. The universe, it says, is mental. And if that sounds absurd or overly abstract, that's only because you've been trained to believe that reality is made of matter, that what's real must be physical, measurable, and separate from thought. But what if that's backwards? What if consciousness doesn't emerge from the brain, but the brain is a receiver of consciousness? What if thoughts don't just exist in your head, but ripple outward, shaping form and function, relationships and outcomes? Think of it like a projector. Your mind isn't watching the movie, it's playing it. What you believe becomes what you see. What you expect becomes what you encounter. Not because of coincidence, but because of structure. This law doesn't just apply to abstract ideas. It governs everything. The shape of your life, the quality of your relationships, the state of your health, even the events you call luck or fate. All of it originates in the mind. Every time you say, "That's just how life is," you're casting a vote for your own limits. Every time you believe something is too hard, too late, or too unlikely, you're not observing reality, you're reinforcing it. Because in the Hermetic model, belief doesn't follow experience. Experience follows belief. This is where modern society has led us astray. We've been trained to look outward for answers, solutions, and validation. We wait for life to give us permission to feel peace, success, and worthiness. But the Kybalion flips that logic on its head. It says that your inner world creates your outer world. That to change your life, you don't start by forcing your environment. You start by mastering your mind. Because until you do, every change you make will be temporary, a surface rearrangement of a deeper pattern. It's not about thinking positive or slapping affirmations on top of trauma. It's about understanding that everything is filtered through your mind, and the quality of your thoughts determines the texture of your life. When you think of yourself as weak, life mirrors weakness. When you think of yourself as unworthy, life reflects rejection. But when you understand that you're the origin, not the echo, you stop waiting for the world to change. You become the source. And that's what makes this principle so dangerous to systems built on control. Because once you understand that you are the projector, the game changes. You no longer need to beg for opportunity, validation, or power. You realize you've had it all along. You were just directing it unconsciously. You weren't powerless. You were misdirected. This isn't about ego or wishful thinking. It's about alignment. When you align your inner state with clarity, focus, and intention, the outer world starts to fall into resonance. Not because it's reacting to you, but because it is you. There is no true separation between your thoughts and your life. They are two expressions of the same source. The law of mentalism reveals that all separation is illusion, that you are not in the universe, observing it from the outside. You are of it, thinking it into being. When you absorb this, not just intellectually, but experientially, everything changes. You stop chasing and start attracting. You stop fixing symptoms and start transforming causes. You begin to notice how the world bends subtly in response to your emotional tone, your belief structure, your mental atmosphere. And that's when you realize, this isn't magic. This is the actual operating system of reality. And for the first time, you're holding the user manual. There's a reason ancient mystics, alchemists, and philosophers repeated one phrase more than any other. As above, so below. As within, so without. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't symbolic. It was literal. It was a key, a cipher, a universal law that reveals the fractal nature of reality, how everything is connected, how everything mirrors itself. What happens in the vast reaches of the cosmos happens within you. What unfolds in your internal world shapes the external one. Nothing stands alone. When the Kybalion explains the law of correspondence, it's not asking you to believe in mystical woo. It's telling you that patterns repeat across all planes of existence. The micro reflects the macro. Galaxies swirl like atoms. Tides rise like breath. The emotions you try to bury resurface in your body, your health, your environment. That voice you hear in your head, it begins showing up in the way people speak to you, treat you, reflect you. Because reality doesn't operate in disconnected pieces. It runs on correspondence. This is why you can't fix external problems without addressing internal patterns. People chase money without looking at their beliefs about scarcity. They demand respect while hating themselves in silence. They try to force love while carrying abandonment in their nervous system. And when life doesn't give them what they want, they blame the world, unaware that the world was only ever showing them what they truly hold inside. That's not punishment, it's precision. Reality doesn't hate you, it's mirroring you, and that mirror is merciless, not out of cruelty, but out of consistency. If you carry chaos inside, your life will reflect chaos. If you believe you're undeserving, life will echo back situations to confirm it. But here's the power of this law. The moment you shift within, the mirror starts to change. You don't have to chase transformation across 10 different areas of your life. You change the internal blueprint, and the external architecture responds. Think about how often people try to solve problems from the outside in. They quit the job, leave the relationship, move cities, but the same patterns follow them. Different scenery, same story. That's not bad luck. That's correspondence. Until the inner frequency changes, the external script repeats. Because the world isn't broken, it's accurate. This is why shadow work matters. Why reflection isn't self-indulgent, but essential. Because until you clean up the emotional static inside you, your life remains a reflection of outdated software. You don't need better circumstances. You need internal clarity, emotional hygiene, nervous system repair, belief recalibration. And once those things shift, life begins to move differently. People respond differently. Opportunities feel less like accidents and more like reflections of who you've become. Correspondence is also why you can look at the world around you and learn about yourself. What triggers you isn't just out there, it's an echo of something unresolved within. What patterns repeat in your relationships? What themes show up in the people you attract? Your life is always trying to show you something about your own vibration. The question is whether you'll look. Even on a cosmic level, this law applies. The structure of the atom mirrors the structure of the solar system. Your lungs mirror the branches of a tree. Your nervous system mirrors the web of the internet. The patterns are everywhere because the source is singular. This isn't spiritual fluff, it's sacred math. The Hermetic tradition teaches that when you study one layer of existence deeply, you gain insight into all the others. Learn to understand your mind, and you begin to understand reality. Learn to regulate your emotions, and you start to unlock manifestation. Learn to decipher your patterns, and you start rewriting your fate. As above, so below means you were never separate from anything. You are the microcosm of the macrocosm, a living portal through which the universe experiences itself. And once you understand that, you're not just watching life anymore. You're participating in it consciously. You're working with the echo instead of fighting the reflection. And everything begins to respond. Everything vibrates. Everything moves. Nothing rests. That's not poetry, it's physics. And long before modern science confirmed it, the Kybalion declared it. The law of vibration is one of the most misunderstood, yet most powerful principles in the Hermetic system. It teaches that nothing is fixed. Not your emotions, not your reality, not even the thoughts you think are just the way it is. Every single thing you've ever experienced, pain, joy, failure, love, has a frequency. and that frequency can shift, which means your life isn't stuck, it's vibrating. You might not feel it, but on a quantum level, the table you touch, the breath you take, the words you speak, all of them are moving, oscillating, resonating. You're swimming in a sea of frequency, and your body, mind, and spirit are all instruments in that field. When you feel off around certain people or spaces, that's not just mood, it's mismatch. Vibration recognizes vibration, and your life, whether you realize it or not, is always organizing itself around the frequency you're holding. This law hits deeper when you realize that you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are, what you're tuned to. If your core frequency is rooted in fear, then fear-based experiences will find you. If your dominant vibration is scarcity, then opportunities will feel scarce. It's not personal, it's harmonic. Reality doesn't respond to what you say, it responds to what you radiate. That's why you can do all the right things, say all the affirmations, visualize your dream life, and still feel stuck. Because it's not about what's on your vision board. It's about what's in your nervous system. It's about what you feel when nobody's watching, what you believe when everything's quiet. Vibration isn't something you fake, it's something you embody. An embodiment doesn't come from performance, it comes from alignment. Start to think of your emotional states, not as annoyances, but as frequencies. Anger, grief, joy, gratitude, each has its own vibration. You've felt it. Gratitude lifts you. Grief pulls you inward. Anxiety scrambles the signal. That's not a metaphor. That's the felt experience of vibrational resonance. And the beautiful thing? You're not locked into any of it. You can shift. You can recalibrate. Not instantly, not perfectly, but deliberately. That's what the law of vibration gives you, the ability to influence your own frequency, and in doing so, reshape the field around you. This is why tools like meditation, breathwork, sound healing, and even silence work. They don't just calm you down, they tune you. They help you drop below the surface noise and access your base frequency. And once you're aware of that baseline, you can start to shift it. You become more intentional with what you consume. Media, food, conversations, because everything is either raising or lowering your state. There is no neutral, and it goes further. The law of vibration explains why certain music moves you, why some environments drain you, why some people light up a room while others dim it. It's all frequency. Some frequencies expand you, others compress you. Most people never learn to discern this. They live on autopilot, reacting to their environment, unaware that they're absorbing the vibration of every room they walk into, every piece of content they scroll past, every voice they let in. But once you understand this law, you stop reacting and start tuning. You stop saying, "I had a bad day," and start asking, "What frequency did I slip into?" You stop blaming circumstances and start managing your state. You realize that you're not just a participant, you're a broadcaster, and the world is responding to your signal. You don't raise your vibration by forcing positivity or denying reality. You raise it by choosing clarity, by letting go of what no longer resonates, by remembering that movement is always possible, that nothing is still, that no matter how long you've felt stuck, the truth is, you've always been vibrating, and now you get to choose the frequency. Most people live their lives at the mercy of circumstances. They blame the economy for their lack of wealth, their childhood for their emotional wounds, their partner for their unhappiness. Everything is someone else's fault, somewhere else's doing. But the Kybalion teaches that this mindset is the signature of those trapped on the effect side of reality, those who wait, react, and rationalize. The law of cause and effect is the dividing line between being a passive observer of your life and becoming a conscious creator of it. This principle states that nothing happens by chance. Every outcome has a cause. Every result has a root. If something exists in your life, it didn't just appear. It was created, directly or indirectly, by forces you either initiated or allowed. And until you understand that, you'll keep experiencing your life as chaos instead of consequence. You'll keep thinking it's bad luck instead of misalignment. You'll keep feeling like a victim, even when the truth is far more empowering. You've been the source all along. Now, that doesn't mean every painful thing in your life is your fault, but it does mean everything in your life is your responsibility. There's a difference. Fault keeps you stuck. Responsibility frees you. Because once you accept that you have the power to cause, you also accept that you have the power to change. This is the law that breaks helplessness. It snaps you out of spiritual bypassing and forces you to confront the choices, conscious or unconscious, that shaped your current reality. Think about it. How many times have you said something like, "Why does this always happen to me?" Or, "Why can't I catch a break?" Hidden in those questions is an assumption that life is random, that outcomes are unfair, that reality is working against you. But that perspective only exists when you don't understand this law, when you don't realize that repeated patterns are evidence of repeated causes, that nothing is showing up to you, it's showing up from you. When you internalize this, everything shifts. You stop trying to control people and start mastering your energy. You stop chasing external validation and start aligning with internal integrity. You start asking better questions, not, "Why me?" but, "What pattern am I repeating? What belief is driving this? What thought or habit is feeding this outcome?" Those are the questions of someone moving from effect to cause, from victim to architect. You also begin to see how others live caught in loops of their own making. Not because they're lazy or broken, but because they've never been taught this law. They keep trying to fix outcomes instead of correcting origins. They try to manage symptoms while ignoring the root vibration. And that's why so many people, despite all their efforts, stay stuck. They're trying to build a new life with the same old tools. This law doesn't just invite you to break cycles, it demands it. It demands that you stop outsourcing your power, that you stop pretending you're just along for the ride. The law of cause and effect doesn't ask you to like your circumstances, it asks you to own them, not from guilt, but from strength. Because once you do, you can begin to track the signal back to the source. You can reverse engineer your results. And when you start doing that, you realize something most people never do. Nothing is truly out of your hands. You can become the cause, the initiating force, the conscious chooser. And the moment you do, you begin to move differently in the world. You speak with intention. You act with clarity. You create with discipline. You start to anticipate outcomes instead of being surprised by them. You stop living in reactivity and start living in rhythm. You begin to walk through life with the quiet, knowing that nothing is random, because you've taken your seat at the source. And that's where freedom lives. Not in avoiding pain or controlling others, but in understanding how to trace every experience back to thought, belief, vibration, or action. When you master the law of cause and effect, you don't just fix your life, you reclaim it. The world you live in is built on opposites, hot and cold, light and dark, good and bad, masculine and feminine. From the moment you were born, your mind was trained to divide reality into binaries, this or that, right or wrong, win or lose. And while duality helps you navigate the physical world, it also traps you in limitation if you never learn to see beyond it. The Kybalion addresses this through two closely connected laws, the law of polarity and the law of gender. Together, they expose the illusion of separation and offer a path toward inner alchemy. Let's start with polarity. This law states that everything is dual, but that opposites are the same in nature, differing only in degree. Think about temperature. Hot and cold are not separate forces. They're the same thing, measured on a spectrum. Where does cold end and heat begin? You can't define it. You can't draw the line. The same goes for love and hate, fear and courage, success and failure. They're different frequencies of the same essence. Once you understand that, you begin to see that transformation doesn't require replacement. It requires elevation. You don't eliminate fear to become courageous. You transmute fear by raising its frequency. You don't have to destroy the darkness. You just turn up the light. This law also reveals the manipulative power of polarity in society. Politics, media, religion, they all thrive on binary thinking. Us versus them, right versus left, You're made to believe you have to choose a side. But sides create division. Division feeds control. The Kybalion reminds you that true power isn't found in extremes, it's found in balance. Polarity is not the enemy. Attachment to one pole is. Then there's the law of gender, perhaps the most misunderstood of them all. When people hear gender, they think biology. But this principle has nothing to do with body parts and everything to do with energy. It teaches that both masculine and feminine forces exist in everything and everyone. The masculine is active, directive, assertive. The feminine is receptive, intuitive, creative. One is not superior to the other. They are complementary. They are two aspects of the same source. And when they're out of balance, things break. Look around. We live in a hyper-masculine world, one obsessed with doing, forcing, dominating. Productivity over presence, control over intuition, loud over quiet. But without the feminine principle, there is no creation. Without the feminine, there is no inner guidance, no flow, no integration. And the result? Burnout, numbness, disconnection. People achieving more and feeling less, hustling while hollow. When you understand the law of gender, you stop confusing softness with weakness. You stop fearing stillness. You stop suppressing parts of yourself to fit a role. And instead, you begin to harmonize. You learn when to act and when to receive, when to speak and when to listen, when to build and when to rest. You stop seeing yourself as fractured, and you start integrating the full spectrum of who you are. And this isn't just about personal balance, it's cosmic. The ancients believed that true creation only happens when these polarities unite in harmony. That every act of manifestation, every birth of a new reality, requires both the seed and the soil, the intention and the intuition, the fire and the water. You are both. You've always been both. But society trained you to over-identify with one, suppress the other, and wonder why you feel incomplete. The Kybalion doesn't ask you to become someone else. It asks you to become whole. To move beyond the illusion of extremes and into the space where transformation lives. In the middle, where opposites meet, where polarity dissolves, where creation begins. That's where your power has been waiting. Not in choosing one side, but in learning how to dance between them. The world treats the Kybalion like it's just another esoteric book, forgotten, dusty, symbolic. But its teachings didn't fade because they were irrelevant. They were buried because they were too powerful. This knowledge was never meant for everyone. It was preserved in secrecy, passed through mystery schools, veiled in allegory, and protected by those who understood its potential. Not because it was dangerous to the world, but because it was dangerous to the systems that profit from people staying blind. You weren't supposed to know that you're a creator. You were meant to believe you're a consumer. You weren't supposed to understand how your thoughts shape reality. You were supposed to outsource your thinking to institutions, to governments, to religion, to the media. Power structures don't thrive when people think for themselves. They thrive when people obey, repeat, and conform. And the Kybalion? It's the exact opposite of that. It doesn't ask you to join a movement. It asks you to wake up. Throughout history, this knowledge has never really disappeared. It just changed costumes. The Hermetic principles have been whispered through Egyptian temples, echoed in ancient Greece, reinterpreted by Gnostics, alchemists, Sufis, and even embedded in early Christian mysticism. You'll find traces of these laws in the teachings of Buddha, in the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, in the writings of Plato, in the symbols of Freemasonry. They're everywhere and nowhere, hidden in plain sight, visible only to those who are truly looking. And that's no accident. Because when you strip away dogma and control, what remains is the raw architecture of reality. These principles are the scaffolding behind all spiritual systems. They're the framework beneath the metaphor. The Kybalion doesn't contradict religion. It reveals what religion was built on before it was distorted by men with agendas. That's why it feels familiar when you read it. It resonates. Not because it's new, but because it speaks to something you've always known, somewhere deep under the noise. But let's be clear, this isn't about ancient history. This is about now. In a world drowning in distraction, in chaos, in algorithmic manipulation, hermetic knowledge is a threat. It teaches sovereignty over submission, creation over consumption, inner truth over external noise. And most people? They've been trained to fear that kind of freedom, to think it's selfish, dangerous, rebellious, to see it as a threat to social order. And you know what? It is, but not in the way they'd have you believe. Because when enough people wake up to this knowledge, things change. Not through riots or revolutions, but through resonance. Through the quiet power of individuals who stop chasing and start embodying, who stop following scripts and start writing their own. That's the real threat. Not violence, but vision. Not protest, but presence. When you live in alignment with these laws, you radiate a frequency that's difficult to manipulate. You stop being programmable. You start being sovereign. And this is what they don't want. Not they, as in shadowy figures in some hidden room, but the collective machinery of control that depends on your distraction, your disempowerment, your doubt. Because a person who knows they are the cause, who understands correspondence, who masters their vibration and balances their polarities, is untouchable. You can't shame them into obedience. You can't scare them into silence. You can't sell them an illusion. They've seen through it. The legacy of the Kybalion isn't a secret anymore. It's not locked away in mystery schools or cloaked in riddles. It's accessible, right now. And that's the most radical truth of all. You don't need permission. You don't need initiation. You just need awareness. The gate was never locked. You were just never told there was a door. Understanding the laws is one thing. Living them, that's where everything changes. Because knowledge without embodiment is just another distraction. You can read every esoteric book in existence, memorize the 7 principles, quote them back with perfect precision, and still stay trapped in the same cycles if you don't apply them. The Kybalion is not a philosophy to admire. It's a manual to integrate. These laws aren't asking you to worship anything. They're asking you to wake up and operate reality with awareness. So what does it actually mean to live the laws? It means you become intentional with everything. Your thoughts, your reactions, your habits, your energy. You start to notice how your inner state is creating your outer world. You observe how a small shift in belief changes the course of a conversation. How choosing presence instead of panic transforms an entire day. How mastering your response in a moment of stress doesn't just change the outcome, it rewires your reality. Living the law of mentalism means you stop letting your thoughts run on autopilot. You take responsibility for what you're projecting, not just what you're perceiving. It's no longer about blame or guilt. It's about alignment. It's about asking, what am I thinking right now? And is it in harmony with what I want to create? You don't wait for clarity to show up. You cultivate it. Living the law of correspondence means you stop separating your life into compartments. There's no such thing as just work stress or just a bad relationship. Every pattern reflects a deeper pattern. You start looking at your external world like a mirror, and when something's off, you don't attack the reflection, you go to the source. You ask, where inside me does this pattern begin? Living the law of vibration means you become attuned to your frequency, not just in moments of meditation, but throughout the day. You pay attention to how people, media, food, and environments impact your state. And instead of blaming the outside world, you get deliberate about tuning your inner instrument. You no longer try to force outcomes. You raise your frequency and let resonance do the work. Living cause and effect means no more waiting for the world to fix itself. You stop being passive. You stop treating problems as fate and start treating them as feedback. You act with precision. You take initiative. You become the cause, not occasionally, but consistently. That's the shift. That's the upgrade. That's where real freedom begins. And here's what most people won't understand. This path isn't loud. It's not about showing off your growth or branding your awakening. It's quiet, steady, disciplined. Most of the transformation happens in the moments no one sees. The thought you catch and reframe. the emotion you process instead of suppress, the truth you tell yourself when it would be easier to run. That's the work. That's the mastery. And it compounds over time. You don't need a new identity. You need inner congruence. Your outer life will align as a byproduct. And yes, there will still be challenges, but you'll face them differently. You won't panic because you'll know how to pause. You won't spiral because you'll know how to recalibrate. You won't abandon yourself because you've built a relationship with your mind, your frequency, your reality. Most people won't ever study these principles, and they'll never know why life keeps repeating. But you're here, which means you're ready. Join the Insights Academy free newsletter below, and we'll send you a digital copy of the Kybalion to go deeper. Miss this, and you miss the manual to your own mind. Living the laws doesn't require perfection. It requires presence. It requires choosing awareness over reactivity again and again, until awareness becomes your default, until creation becomes natural, until you're no longer asking, why is this happening to me? Because you already know. You caused it, or you allowed it. And now, you get to choose differently. There's a point in your journey where you stop asking if this is all real and start asking how it works. You stop debating whether life has meaning and start realizing it runs on code, patterns, laws, unseen forces that don't care about your opinions or your fears. That's what the Kybalion reveals. It's not a guide to believing something. It's a system for navigating the simulation, because that's what this is. A simulation, not in the sci-fi sense, but in the energetic one. A mental construct shaped by consciousness, filtered through perception, projected outward as experience. The material world you see and touch is just the interface. The code is deeper. Thought, vibration, polarity, cause. When you live unaware of that code, life feels random, punishing, out of control. But when you start to see the structure, everything begins to make sense. Not because life gets easier, but because you finally understand how it moves. This isn't about escaping the simulation. It's about mastering it. The same way a lucid dreamer becomes aware within the dream, your awareness of the laws makes you lucid in waking life. You're no longer pulled blindly by circumstance. You're aware of the levers, the patterns, the echo loops. You don't just feel pain, you examine it. You don't just feel lost, you track the vibration that created the detour. That's the power of understanding the code. You're not just reacting anymore, you're rewriting. And what you'll find is that the world begins to bend subtly to your awareness, not in a flashy, dramatic way, not with magic wands or overnight miracles, but with rhythm, with precision, with synchronicities that feel too perfect to be accidents. That's not luck, that's alignment. That's the simulation recognizing a conscious player. The greatest trap is thinking you're separate from the system, that you're just here to survive it. But you are the system. The same intelligence that moves galaxies breathes through your lungs. The same laws that govern the stars govern your choices, your words, your emotions. The simulation doesn't trap you, it mirrors you. And that's the part they never told you. That's what the Kybalion shows you. Once you stop fighting the reflection and start working with the code, you step out of chaos and into coherence. You don't need to burn your life down. You don't need to quit everything or vanish into a forest. You just need to see differently, think differently, move with the laws instead of against them. And piece by piece, your reality recalibrates. Not because you forced it, but because you aligned with the truth of how it actually works. So now the question isn't whether these laws are real. The question is whether you're ready to live as if they are. Whether you're ready to stop reacting and start creating. Whether you're ready to stop being a piece on the board and start being the one who moves the pieces. Not through control, but through awareness. Not through force, but through frequency. That's what Hermetic wisdom gives you. Not answers, but tools. And the beauty of it? You don't need permission. You don't need to be chosen. You don't need to wait. The laws have been here the whole time. The code has always been running. You've just finally opened your eyes to it. What you do with that awareness is up to you. But understand this, once you see the game, you can't go back to pretending you don't know how it's played. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it,"